In this segment, we're going to discuss common objections that either our sales staff has or that our guests have about this bed. So John is going to read for me some objections that we've gotten from our sales staff here in Virginia Beach.
Thanks, Tim. The first objection we have is, man, I have a tough time smoothly operating the remote to inflate or deflate the bladder.
Well, that brings up a couple of good points. First of all, that's a great question. Thing I'd like to address first is, please don't call it a bladder. When I worked for the other company that makes our competitor bed, I had a sales rep that actually said, I'm going to relieve the bladder now. Please don't. I'm going to bring you down. Don't bring me down. I'm going to deflate it. No. What we want to say is we're going to raise and lower the firmness. That sounds much nicer. Now, as far as being familiar with the remote, it's like any other remote. A remote you have maybe for your television or your video games. The more familiar you get with it, the more you play with it, the more natural it'll be. I don't know if you noticed when I did the demonstration, I seldom have to look at the remote because I know where all the controls are. You should practice with the people you work with, doing demos. And the more you practice, the more money you're going to make. John, any other objections?
Yeah, Tim, my motor, my bed, in my store, it's really loud.
When I first moved to this market, I heard that. And some people told me, and I thought it shouldn't be. I know because I own one of these beds. And maybe at the most you hear a very quiet hum, which I find soothing. But when I went to the bed in the store, the demo bed, yes, it was making a lot of noise because the firmness control unit, by the way, we don't call it a pump because a pump sounds like something you fill up the air in your bike tires with. Right. We call it a firmness control unit. The firmness control unit was on the floor vertically up against the wall. It should not be touching anything, and it should be horizontal. It goes right under the bed. So it shouldn't be touching the frame. It shouldn't be touching the wall. If it's on a hard floor, like a hardwood or maybe tile, they should put something underneath it, like a towel, and that'll keep it from vibrating. But it should be quiet.
Cool. The next one is, what's with the warranty on the pump? Is that going to go out in like a year or two, and then the guest has to pay for that?
That's a very good question. Again, we call it a firmness control unit. Mm-hmm. But the firmness control unit, the remotes, all of the components, first of all, they're interchangeable. Now, let me ask you a question. If your car had a flat tire, would you go out and buy a new car?
No.
But if your bed, one part of it broke down, what do you have to do?
Replace that part.
You have to replace the whole bed with a conventional innerspring.
Correct.
Like if the edge support broke down, you buy a new bed.
Right.
With this bed, it's modular. If any component failed for whatever reason, you can replace that component. Mm-hmm. So it all has a 10-year full replacement warranty. So you're going to find that this bed requires very little maintenance, and if something did go wrong, you can replace just that component.
Wow, that's great. The next one was, when I do the demo with the Lux, the guest just doesn't feel that much of a difference between the firmness and softness as I'm changing it.
That's a good question. I think that when we first introduced this bed, we were trained to start in the middle and go up and down. And yes, you're not going to feel as much of a change. But doing it the way that we talked about, where you start at the firmest and go down, your guest will feel it. And the most important thing here is to narrate the experience. As you tell them, they'll feel it. They'll sense what's happening because you're guiding them through it.
And which model should we present it just for reinforcement? Do we want to do the demonstration?
Well, if you have the option on both beds, you want to use the bed with the least amount of padding because that actually emphasizes what's going on. But I think some stores only have one model. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you have both, use it with the bed that has the least amount of padding. If you have other models, use those as well.
Okay, great. One last one. This sales associate says, what happens if we get the bed delivered and the bladder deflates overnight, or I have this issue within 24 hours? Now what?
Well, I can understand their concern. And the reason is that it's something that we're not completely familiar with. When you have different components, we wonder, what if one of them fails? What if the customer is unhappy? First of all, the defect rate on beds like this are actually lower than conventional innersprings. One of the reasons it's all components. The other thing is that Tempur Pedic has really gone to a lot of effort to make sure that they made this as well as they could. And they've been working on this for several years. It's not just something they came up with. And I have found in my experience, and I've actually sold dozens of these, both here and in other markets, I've never had a problem. Now, unfortunately, with defects, sometimes when you get the problems, they're all in one batch because you got the 12 beds that were made on somebody's bad day.
Yeah.
And then we think they're all bad. But the truth is the defect rate is less than 5%, which is better than conventional inner springs.
Cool. Thank you very much, Tim. Appreciate you clearing up a lot of these misnomers out there that sales associates have.
Well, it's my pleasure, John. And misnomer is a good word. There are some things that we just have in our mind that happen, and they really don't. If I can add one more thing, somebody asked me even this morning, we're in a meeting, and somebody said, what if when the pump, the firmness control unit, kicks on in the middle of the night to reinflate the bed? It doesn't.
Gotcha.
And that's the same thing with our competitor. For some reason, the rumors got out there that it kicks on at night to bring the level up because of air loss. The air doesn't go down. It's going to stay just the way you want it, and it only changes when you make a change. Now, one thing we were talking about is getting familiar and comfortable demonstrating the bed. It's just a fact of nature that if we don't like it or if we're not comfortable with it, we're not going to show it. Why should we show this? Because we're taking money away from our competitor and bringing it to ourselves and our company. How do we get comfortable with it? We work with each other.
Yep.
So when you've got some downtime, work with your partner, do a presentation. When your AM comes, have your AM watch your presentation. When your DM comes in the store, do this routinely, and you'll find that not only are you comfortable with it and you'll make more sales, you'll actually make customers happy. I hope this has been helpful to you. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me or John. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, thanks for joining us today, guys. We just want to recap a few things of what we covered today. Tim talked a lot about the how and the why, demonstrated what to do with the guest to make sure it's demonstrated effectively, and then recap some of those misnomers that are out there in terms of our concerns and why we might not want to show it. One thing we didn't touch on quite yet, but I wanted to, was a discussion that Tim and I had just the other day. You were telling me that a lot of these guests that you end up showing the choice model to are in fact going out there to continue to shop, but they don't really tell you that. Instead, you kind of discovered on your own.
That's a great point, John. As a matter of fact, a lot of the guests that I have on premium beds, like the Tempur Pedic or Stearns & Foster, and they tell me, oh, that's great, could you write that down? We're going to go home and think about it. We'll be back. And they never come back. Instead of just letting them leave, I ask them, have you considered a bed with air technology? Very often they tell me, we're heading there next, to the mall or to another store. And I say, wonderful. You are thinking about a bed with great technology and a bed that can solve a lot of problems. And that particular bed that you mentioned is made by the 7th largest mattress manufacturer in the United States. We happen to have a bed with similar technology made by the largest mattress manufacturer in the world. Would you like to see that bed?
Absolutely.
Just for fun.
Right.
And you'll find that you'll very often sell these people because of the benefits that we have on this bed over our competitor. And those benefits, of course, are we have true Tempur material, and we have 3 air chambers on each side instead of 1.
Fantastic. So hope you enjoyed the video. Definitely put it into use. My challenge to you is to commit to practicing it 5 times before you work with a guest, because if you work with them right off the bat, you stumble and you fall, you'll lose confidence and say, gee, I don't want to be embarrassed like that again. So do yourself a favor, do a favor for your guests. Practice at least 5 times, rewatch the video, get very comfortable with it before trying to deploy this yourself. Thanks again for joining us. Have a good day.
Thank you.